Hello everyone, nice to meeting you virtually. I'm Jasmine Wu, currently a second year PhD student in the Media, Technology and Society program in the School of Communication at Northwestern University. Today I'm going to share the research I did with my collaborators Arshia and Brennan and my advisors Leslie and Noshir. COVID threw us into a world of computer-supported cooperative work style. We have no choice but to work remotely with collaboration and communication technologies. But people cope with the crisis in different ways. We're interested in how people cope with it differently, and how is this difference reflected in their communication networks. Specifically, we're interested in if the level of employees' performance before COVID affects their networking style during COVID. Are high performers creating more ties, broadening their networks to get new information, or are they maintaining ties or deepening their networks to obtain support and help from their team members? Also, with emergencies, the roles in teams often adjust to serve the day by day changes, which would also affect their networking style in the organization. So you can see here we're more interested in the changes or the dynamics of their networks. So, the overarching question here of this study is, given the crucial impact of team boundaries on organizational networks, how do employees' networks within and between teams evolve in face of crisis? I'd like to note that in this specific study, we're not focusing on the changes of nodes or node attributes. We're more interested in the dynamics of ties between members in teams and ties between teams. In the network literature, network churn is not a new concept, but there is no agreement in the literature about the definition of the network churn. Neelan scrutinized the churn literature in her 2019 dissertation and defined it as the aggregate change of added and job ties across times in relation to the current network. She pinpointed three key parts in this definition. First, aggregate change includes tie creation, maintenance, dissolution, and reactivation, which is distinct from structural network measures like size or density. Second point, cross times means multiple network snapshots may not be enough. We want to track those aggregate changes along a continuous time frame. Third, in relation to the current network means we update priors that inform subsequent networking behaviors and decisions. Previous studies have shown that people cannot add ties to their network indefinitely, which means the capacity of network one can hold is not infinite. Adding new ties requires making room through dropping ties and reducing current tie strains. So adding and dropping ties are highly correlated. Ties are added because people want non-redundant information, new skills, and innovative solutions for problems they may have not encountered before. So we hypothesize that in face of crisis, high performers create more inter-team ties but not intra-team ties to seek non-redundant information and creative solutions. Second, dropping ties does not always indicate failed relationships. It's an opportunity cost for maintaining some other ties. It's also a way to make more room for new contacts. Sometimes people drop ties to avoid positional bottlenecks. These people are not in a great position in the networks to disseminate information, for example. So we hypothesize that in face of crisis, higher performers drop more intra-team ties but not inter-team ties because they need to make more room for new contacts. The third hypothesis is related to tie reactivation. Previous studies on dormant ties have shown that reactivating dormant ties can bring greater novelty, more efficiency at work, greater trust, and more shared perspectives. Especially in face of crisis, high performers would find their way to connect with their old friends, asking for information or relying on them for social support. So we hypothesize that during the pandemic, high performers are more likely to reactivate both intra-team and inter-team ties than average performers. And here are all of our hypotheses. We conducted a field research to test these hypotheses. We collected data in a multinational industrial manufacturing company in China, and there are three departments. A sample size of 185 employees across 34 offices in 16 cities. In total, there are 18 teams within and across cities. We collected both digital trace logs and survey data. The digital trace logs are the metadata on a video conferencing platform like Zoom. The survey includes questions like, who do you go to for advice or help? And we also collected the HR data such as performance and their positions in the hierarchy. And here we showed a timeline of COVID-19 cases in China. Our digital trace logs collected from October 2019 to March 2020 covers the time points of awareness of COVID at the beginning of January, leaving offices at the end of January, and phased return in the middle of February. We partitioned the time frame into 4 phases based on the major events happened in the organization and the country, naming them normal working, crisis looming when they are aware of the spreading virus, shift to remote when they left their offices and started remote work, and phased return when the company began partial return to offices. And in the network we constructed, the nodes are 185 employees, and the ties indicate employees who are in at least 1, 2, or 7 meetings together at each phase based on the number of workdays. And we exclude large company meetings of size greater than 7. And in practice, we actually didn't include lots of meetings because only over 92% of meetings have 7 or fewer participants. And for each person, we calculated how many inter-team and intra-team ties they created, dropped, and reactivated for the 4 phases. For example, AB created 1 inter-team tie and 1 intra-team tie from normal working to crisis looming, created 1 inter-team tie, dropped 1 inter-team tie and 1 intra-team tie when shifting to remote, and she created 3 ties in total and reactivated 1 inter-team tie that was not in the shift to remote phase but was in the previous 2 phases. And in the analysis, the independent variable here is the performance scores evaluated by their headquarters before COVID. It was rated on a scale from 1 to 5. 5 means outstanding performance. Since the interval of this ordinal variable is equal, so we can use the ordinary least square regressions model to test the hypothesis. Let's then look at our hypothesis testing and results. So hypothesis 1 is supported. High performers were more likely to create inter-team ties but not intra-team ties during pandemic. This suggested they were focusing on spanning the boundaries. And hypothesis 2 was partially supported. Indeed, high performers were more likely to drop intra-team ties to free up the cognitive spaces for new contacts. They are also more likely to drop inter-team ties compared to average performers. This suggests that they are more likely to pause connections with their existing contacts in general during pandemic. And for hypothesis 3, which is supported, high performers are more likely to reactivate both intra-team and inter-team ties compared to others in face of crisis, which suggests that they would find their way to reach out to those contacts who could potentially bring more value to them than making entirely new friends. And to look at the results together again, we found only hypothesis 2 was partially supported. The potential explanation for this is high performers tend to be more adventurous in their networking style under stress, dropping ties in general to make room for other contacts outside their teams. And in conclusion, in face of crisis, high performers are more likely to be the boundary spanners by creating more inter-team ties and dropping all the ties, comparing with average performers. And high performers are also more likely to reactivate intra-team and inter-team ties compared with average performers. And several limitations needs to be acknowledged here. First, we did not control for individual social status and organizational rank in the regression models. Prior research shows that higher status people activate larger and denser networks under stress. Further research should investigate the interplay between status and network churn in the context of crisis. Second, tie strength was not included in the analysis. A straightforward way to approach this is to leverage the network data we collected in the survey, and by constructing friendship networks, we can potentially identify some strong ties. Further research should examine the nuances of tie strengths in network dynamics during crisis. Third, the digital trace data didn't have the information like who initiate the call, so we are unable to explore how agency plays out there. And fourth limitation is about generalizability. This study focused only on one organization in China, and we determined pre and post lockdown period based on the information company representative offered, and further research should investigate the organizations that vary in size and industries. It's also important to note that distinct national reactions of the crisis in different countries and how it could affect the network churn within organization as well as the individual coping strategies. And the cultural factors also affect employees' tendency to create new ties and reactivate dormant ties upon environmental stimuli. So in total, this study used digital trace data to construct communication networks and provides early but important empirical evidence to support the effect of individual performance on networking styles during crisis through a team-level lens. In the end, again, special thanks to my advisors, Nashir Contractor and Leslie DeChurch, and my collaborators in the lab, Arshia and Brennan. Thank you. I appreciate any questions, concerns, or feedback. Thank you.